All right, everyone. I have on another Liz here today. I have Liz Cobb, and she has an amazing mission to help empower mamas so that they can create the life of their dreams with inner joy and peace while breaking generational patterns and creating a thriving home environment to nurture their children and themselves. I feel like this is going to be such an amazing podcast because she likes talking about going from your journey of being stressed, overwhelmed, and lost, and rediscovering your joy, deepening relationships. And I know that that's a season that so many of us are in, whether you're trying to conceive, have new little ones, or even if your kids are grown, it's so easy to get sucked into that stress and overwhelm of life. So I'm really excited to talk with Liz here. And she's also a hypnosis. So we're going to get into that as well, which I'm really excited about. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yes, hi Liz. I just want to say thank you so much for having me here. I'm really extremely honored to be here. And I love the name too of your podcast, To Give Life. I think that is just a really cool meaning.
Thank
So,
you. Thank you. Yeah. It's something I had been thinking about for like almost 2 years now. So it was exciting to finally make that change. Well, I'd love for you to first off just share about yourself. So how did you get to this place where you wanted to help mamas in this season of life? And even becoming a hypnosis. So what led you to this? I feel like most people usually have their own journey of like self-discovery or healing
yes,
or whatever it is that brings them to the path that they are on now.
that's so true. That's exactly what brought me to where I am. So I am a mom to three amazing kids. They're 8, 6, and then 3. And I am a single mama now, which brings on a whole new set of challenges. But basically, a few years back, I was just in this horrible, dark place. I just felt stressed, overwhelmed. I felt like no matter what I did, it was never good enough. I started to kind of lose that spark inside and feel lost and just didn't really know what I was doing anymore. And I couldn't be present and actually enjoy my kids and be happy and joyful. And so I really had to have like that hard moment of truth of being like, okay, this is not what I imagined motherhood to be like. And to be like, all these things are coming up, these feelings, and being able to acknowledge it and recognize it. And then basically being able to choose and be like, okay, so let's start over. Like, this isn't how I want to be a mom. I want to be that happy, fun, joyful mom that enjoys the childhood because it goes so fast. Like, the kids just grow up in a blink of an eye. Like, my 8-year-old, I'm like, it seemed like yesterday you were a baby, and here you are already almost 9. So, yes, I had that turning point, and that's where I started doing personal development courses and joining coaching programs. And you mentioned the hypnosis, and yes, so that was a key component of me getting my life back in order. I had come across that as one of the tools in the program, and it like completely shifted and changed how I thought, how I felt. So instead of having that default state of always being stressed, overwhelmed, I mean, I'd be woken up in the middle of the night with anxiety about the next day and about how am I going to get everything done. And so with hypnosis, that's a really key tool that allowed me to change the way I think and feel so that now I can show up with my kids and I'm happy and I'm joyful and I have fun and we laugh and to be able to be present. So yes, so after learning all those tools, I just like had a soft spot in my heart for all these moms that are out there and not having all this information to learn like how their brain works and how to really help themselves so that they can thrive. Because I felt like a lot of moms too, a lot of them were just saying, this is what life is. You have young kids, like you're going to be stressed. You're not going to have time to take care of yourself. And so I really want to debunk that no, you can have a life built on joy and love and where the mom is thriving too with the kids. Because what I found with me is like, as I started to thrive, all of a sudden my kids were like happier and you're getting along better. And there wasn't so much bickering and arguing in the home. So yeah, it just completely shifted the whole family dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I feel like it's really hard to make that switch from surviving to thriving. I think that we've
yes.
all kind of been there. I feel like I'm somewhere in the middle right now. Because the seasons of life are so different. Like
Mm-hmm.
when you have newborns and toddlers and like, pregnant, whatever, like those, I feel like there's days where you are completely in survival mode.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be tough to to prioritize self-care or do something for yourself, or even like find the joy in cleaning up, you know, your third poopy diaper and whatever it is that day, you know? So I feel like
Oh,
making
yes.
that switch, and even like hearing this messaging, like, cause you hear it so much of like, you need self-care, you need to prioritize yourself, you need to whatever. And it's like, okay, but where's the handbook? Where's the manual on like how to
Mhm.
do this? Because like I'm trying, like, you know, like you hear people who are like, I haven't showered in 4 days. Like, I don't
Mhm.
know what,
Done
like, yeah,
that.
like, what do you mean prioritize myself or take care of myself? Because it, to so many people like deep in it, it seems just very unrealistic.
Yes. And I can completely relate to that because that's how I felt at first. I mean, first it was the whole, for me, I had to come to terms with you don't have to always put everyone else first before my needs, because that's how I was raised, with always taking care of everyone else and seeing how that I am important and valuable. And actually, if I'm not thriving, like if I'm sick or burned out and, you know, having to go to the doctor, who's going to take care of my kids? And so, no, it wasn't like an automatic switch where all of a sudden I had this amazing self-care routine and all of that. It was definitely a process and retraining myself and finding out, okay, what is doable self-care for me? Because I also had this like misconception initially that it's like it's this glorious spa day, or somebody watches your kids all day and you get to go, you know, have a whole day or whatever it was, a weekend to yourself.
Right.
And really being able to get clear on, okay, what's something I can do? And definitely with the seasons, that changes. So like, yeah, if you have a newborn, your time for self-care might be need to shift depending on your baby. So, and that's where like finding the pockets, because before what I used to do is when I had those pockets of time, I would be doing laundry, cleaning, doing all these things that I felt this pressure to keep up with for the house, where I started to shift and be like, you know what? The laundry can wait, or if it's not all folded, what's more important is for me to have, what if it was, you know, a hot cup of tea and be able to journal out my thoughts, or maybe it's a beautiful day to go outside, to go for a walk, to take my kids for a walk, and to kind of let go the expectation of having this perfectly organized house and doing all the things that I thought I should be doing, that I feel like a lot of society pressures us with these expectations, and then we become so ingrained with them that then we live our life by those expectations, realizing or not realizing how much it's impacting us and our well-being and our health. So yeah, it can start out simple, you know, just having a moment where you take some nice deep breaths. You know, you put your hand on your heart and you're just taking nice deep breaths in to help regulate yourself to get out of that survival mode, because I definitely was in survival mode a lot. So it was helping regulate my nervous system and train my body to be safe, and that it was okay to just be to be still. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I feel like coming up with like small doable ways to start to show up for yourself. Like I know one for me was like prioritizing eating breakfast and eating enough of it,
yes.
because I was like being like, oh, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon and I'm a monster because I haven't eaten today. And, you know, just like, or like, oh, I had some of my children's table scraps and that's it. So that was like one thing I feel like that helped me be like, oh, okay, like if I'm feeling more nourished, then I'm feeling like I can show up in better ways in my life too. Um, I'm not as hangry, right? I'm not as like
Yes.
quick to like snap. I'm more patient if I'm paying attention to like my hunger cues myself and things like that.
Mhm.
So I feel like starting small, like even things like that. And also like not getting confused, like you said, like this like glorious weekend spa trip. Like that's kind of what we have in mind, because it's hard because you don't want to be like, okay, eating breakfast and taking a shower every day isn't necessarily self-care, because that's like everybody should do that,
Mhm.
right? Like it, you kind of get thrown in this like, oh, well, it's self-care for me to take a shower every day. And it's like, okay, but your husband takes a shower every day. And that's, you know, like it's not necessarily self-care, but it could start as like a small act of that, like just
Yes.
caring for yourself, doing the at least meeting your own basic needs and necessities, and then like building upon that. Like, am I nourished? Am I, at least feeling like a human today? Did I brush my hair, which I still sometimes don't. I mean, I don't brush my hair every day, that's for sure. But just like things like that. And then like, I feel like once you have a base, then it's easier to build upon.
Yes. And I love what you talked about with the nutrition, because that's been a huge part for me. Because I used to do that, would eat the leftovers of the kids or grab something while they're busy trying to take care of them or doing the next thing. So definitely making that time to nourish yourself is huge. Because like for me, I used to always eat sporadically or eat the scraps. And now it's like, no, I have my go-to green smoothie in the morning. And if I need to make it easier for me, I prep it the night before. So that way I just blend it the next day. So making like those little simple steps to help, because yes, I've noticed if I don't eat healthy and nourish my body, I'm much more irritable and grumpy and triggered. And so what you eat is a really big step. And I also liked what you said about getting back to just basic care. Because for me, like as a mom, I really kind of forgot to take care of myself because I was so busy taking care of the kids. So when you said not showering, yeah, that was me. I would not shower for days because I was so busy. And then I was always the last person on my list for the day. And usually by the time everything was done during the day, I collapsed into bed. I was like, forget the shower. Like, I'm going to go get me some extra sleep because I have a baby that's going to be waking up in a couple of hours. So like those basic needs. But yeah, at the time I was so thick in it that I didn't realize those basic needs that I wasn't meeting for myself was hugely impacting me and slowly tearing away at me, my well-being, how I felt about myself, and feeling like I am worth my own time and attention. So yes, I definitely agree with just starting small. If it's, a shower, or if it's doing a nice morning wash on your face, or some people getting up and doing the makeup. Like, do start with something small. And that's a big thing through all my training, is just pick one. Because like I used to be the person that would get easily overwhelmed. I'd be like, oh, I need to eat healthy. I need to exercise. I need to do the meditation, and like 20 things on my list. And then I'd go into overwhelm, and then I'd be like, throw my hands up basically. And I don't even know where to start. So that's one huge thing, is with creating like a new habit that sustains you, is just choose one,
Mm-hmm.
and try it out. If that's for like a week, and see how it works. Does it help you? Do you feel better? Do you feel like you're thriving better with the habit? If not, then, choose a different one. And then once that one becomes ingrained and it becomes more automatic, then okay. Then if you feel ready, choose a second one. And yeah, definitely start small. So.
I feel like when you were saying overwhelm, a lot that comes with that is like the automatic self-talk that comes in. I know for me, my husband likes to laugh at me because even just the other day, he was like, that's not what I said to you. And I'm like, what I heard was, like this. And he's like, yeah, that's not even close to what I said. And I'm like, right, but that's like how I'm interpreting it when I'm in, we kind of build these habits of overwhelm for ourselves. So I don't know if it's building habits. You get sucked into this overwhelm, but you do have a habit of the self-talk that comes in, because that habit can be broken. That's why I'm calling it a habit, because it can be like replaced or changed. But like it is easy to resort to some of those things, or like not even notice the small things that you're telling yourself along the way when you're like just trying to survive. And we're not often very kind. That self-talk is often not very kind to ourselves.
No. Well, first off, I want to say I love that you can have those vulnerable, open conversations with your husband, because that's huge. Because yes, I can so relate to that. Back when I was married before, and just with different relationships, is yes, you like hear all this stuff, and then in your head you start spinning all these stories and what you thought you heard, and it can be completely different than what the person said. And if you don't have that open conversation, you're sitting here thinking this way, and they're thinking they communicated something completely different, and that can just add to resentment and tension in relationships. So yes, the self-talk, because that was big for me. Like, I didn't realize all the thoughts going in my head, and then how those thoughts were creating my feelings. And then, yeah, if I was feeling stressed, overwhelmed, anxious, sad, guess what? I was much less likely to actually eat healthy, to go exercise, to do things to help fill my own cup up, because the negative talk in my head. And yes, when you start having those thoughts of like, I feel, I'm overwhelmed, there's no way I can do this, typically you're not going to take the action. Whereas, if you take deep breaths, re-regulate your nervous system, and just kind of ground yourself, pause a moment, and just think about, breaking it down. What's one thing I can do right now? So making it much more doable. That's something I had to learn, because I'm like I love long to-do lists. I set the bar very high, but it was creating all this overwhelm. And so it's like, what's good? What's the point of a to-do list if all it's doing is making me stressed out and overwhelmed, and I'm not getting any of it done? And one of the things, like with my hypnosis work, is I've learned how much, like, your brain, the more you think or you feel a way, it becomes habituated in your body. So like that was like a huge aha for me, as I had habituated my body with feeling stressed, feeling overwhelmed, feeling anxious. So that became my natural default setting. So then it just took a bit to kind of change those neural pathways in my brain, so that way when a whole bunch comes at me, I can reframe it. I can, pause and do what I need to slow down, to shift out of that natural tendency to go to the stress and the overwhelm. So,
Yeah, I'd like to talk about the nervous system a little bit, because I feel like we don't really think that like the things that like we're thinking or feeling are really impacting our health or like our nervous system. So kind of like, how does that play into it?
yes, yes. Yeah, I had no idea either before, because I used to have like horrible GI problems, and I thought it was just, I was sick or ill, and I didn't realize at the time that no, it was because of all the stress in my relationship, or from being up all night, and not realizing too that, like, because I believed in co-sleeping with my kids and being very responsive. So if they cried, I want to be there with them and soothe them. But I didn't realize at the same time, like, my nervous system was constantly in fight, flight, or freeze mode. That's just my body. It was always on because I want to be there. So yes, really seeing how that affects you, and how when you're in that state of survival, like, you're not thinking as clearly. You don't have the extra resources to actually feel happy and joyful, because when you're in survival, that's it. Like, you're just trying to get through the day, and biologically your brain's just focused on, okay, we need to stay alive,
Mhm.
because biologically it's the very primitive function is what your brain's doing. And so until you can shift out of that survival mode, you don't really have the capacity to feel this joy and happiness and peace, because you're focused on just your basic needs. So, and that's where, yes, doing things to help retrain your nervous system to regulate. So, like, for me, it's the hypnosis. I've done meditation. It can even just be getting outside, putting my feet in the grass. With the warmer weather, now it really works well. So, just doing those
Mhm.
different things. And another thing that I learned about is breath, like taking those deep breaths, because that's something you can do anywhere. Because that
Mhm.
was one of the things for me. It's like, well, I have 3 kids. Like, I can't just go sit and do a meditation. Like, that's not possible. I'll have 3 kids on me, or they'll be fighting. So, like, placing your hand on your heart and taking a few deep breaths, however many you need, to just help your body get out of that survival mode and re-regulate your nervous system, so that then you can choose a different way and feel more full, be able to respond.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember listening to a podcast the other day that was saying, when it comes to like fight or flight mode, I mean, we were built with that for a reason, right? Like
Mhm.
when we used to live where we're in nature and we needed that.
Yes.
But our body still doesn't know the difference. Like your body doesn't know if you're
Mhm.
being chased by a bear or if you're just
Yeah.
like overwhelmed by your kids. So it's still creating a lot of stress on your system, on your body, and that does impact your health, your nervous system, like everything is connected. So trying to find ways to get out of that is so important. We don't realize like this chronic state of stress that we live in often, because it's almost
Mhm.
like a badge of honor. Like, I'm so busy, I'm so overwhelmed. Yeah, like all of this stuff. And it's like, that's that's not really like what life's about. And I remember a while ago on Instagram, I posted something on the podcast page about like, I've never known a well-rested woman. Like I've known a busy woman, I've known an overwhelmed woman, I've known a stressed out woman, but have I known a well-rested woman, like somebody who knows how to take time for themselves, how to fill up their cup when they need, how to get the rest when they need. It's like, no, we're like, go, 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 right? And that chronic stress impacts you a lot more than what we think. So it could come down to impacting how you care for yourself, how you relate to your children, how you lash out at your children, your partner, yourself, all of that. So it is really connected. And I know that it can feel impossible to get out of. Again, I think just like going back to starting with the basics and working your way out, or finding somebody to work with, because sometimes you might not know where to start, and that's okay. But I'd love to kind of talk about like just kind of creating those habits that support your mental and emotional being before we get into hypnosis. So what are like some basic habits that like maybe you started at the beginning that like really helped you?
For me, the big one was just like breath. So just taking those deep breaths and pausing, because I was in such a state of survival. I always felt like I had to react and respond, which I wasn't really responding. I was more reacting, getting really triggered with the kids and just feeling like I was always putting out fires. So just taking that moment to pause and take some deep breaths and acknowledge like whatever I'm feeling, like I honor that I'm feeling over right now, and giving space for those emotions, because that's something that's huge. It's like not just brushing them aside and feeling like you're wrong for having them, or feeling like you have to shut them off. It's like validating yourself and what you're feeling, what you're experiencing, because you know what, some days are really hard when you have like, this is today I had my toddler throwing his food everywhere across the floor, another child screaming at me for help. Like when you have all that going on, really realizing that, it can be hard some days with more than one kids and different needs, and trying to meet those needs. So start small, is what I would say. So the breath is what I used in the beginning. And then things I could do with the kids. So like we'd go outside a lot, go for walks in nature, because that helped me a lot. I always feel better when I'm out in nature, and my kids are much better too. They're much happier when they're running, exploring in the woods or something. So simple things like that. And then the food, that was huge too, because if I wasn't well nourished, it was very hard for me to be calm and loving with my kids or to feel good. So having that smoothie or batch cooking, things that then I can make an easy nutritional lunch for myself. So those were just some easy things to start with. And then finding those pockets of time. So like with my baby, when he would take a nap, maybe that's when I would do journaling or do a short 5-minute meditation. So making it really small and manageable versus like this huge thing. Like I don't have an hour to do that. So finding the little pockets of time where you can, and really focusing on yourself and what you need in those moments. So
yeah, that's good. So let's talk hypnosis, because I'm very, very curious about this. And I also feel like there's a lot of myths around it. Like how I grew up was basically like hypnosis is evil. So, or like, yeah, that it's evil, or, I mean, you just see the ones of like the stuff on TV where you hypnotize somebody to do something that they normally wouldn't, like, I don't even remember the show that used to be on that had that. So let's talk about like what you do and how it's different.
Yes. So I love this. I love all things hypnosis because I can relate to what you just said. Because before I learned about it, using it for transformational purposes, that's what I thought. I'm like, that's that crazy stuff that they have you get up on the stage, forget your name, or mind control. So usually what I like to start with is busting the myths. Because when you say hypnosis, so many things come up for people. One of them is, it's mind control, which that's not true. You're completely in control the entire time. So like if the hypnotist says something that you don't agree with, that goes against your core values, you're not going to accept that, because that's not who you are. Some people think it's sleep. And actually, if you're sleeping, you're not getting the full benefits. It's simply a very relaxed state, just like meditation. So you're just very relaxed. Your brain's down in theta brainwave, and you're just relaxed and calm. So that's another myth. Another one is you can get stuck in hypnosis, and I've never heard of somebody who's been stuck in hypnosis that had to go to the ER. Like you can just open up your eyes. Now, some people do fall asleep.
Yeah, it's
That has
not
happened.
Inception. It's not the movie Inception.
Yeah. So some people do fall asleep. And really the big difference is there's stage hypnosis, which is the one where people are doing it for fun, like forget your name, balk like a chicken. And then there's transformational hypnosis, and that's what I specialize in. And it's all about working with the client on what do they want to change with the way they think, the way they feel, with their beliefs, with how they view themselves, their world. And so that's what I focus on. And the one that you brought up about the movies, good old Hollywood can just kind of, twist things and get you to think things whatever they want. Because that kind of reminds me of that movie, The Jungle Book, where like the snake is hypnotizing
Yeah.
that you can do it with the kids.
Or it's like that thing where they're like, you're getting very, very sleepy.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because even my kids the other day, they're like, oh yeah, he just hypnotized and controlled them. And I'm like, oh, wait. I'm like, that's just the movie. Like they're giving you a false perception. Like that's not really true. So those are the more common myths. I don't know. Are there any other myths you can think of?
Not necessarily, but I'd love to hear kind of like how, I guess like if you use it like with your clients, so you're kind of, it's like transformational. So you're just kind of like using words to implant. I don't know, like you tell me.
So basically how it works, because I didn't realize this when I was trying to change habits and different things, is it felt so hard. It felt like there was so much resistance, or I'd make this great habit, and then a couple of weeks later, I was back to my old patterns, and I was just like, what's wrong with me? Like, why can't I get this? When in reality, there's nothing wrong with any of us. It has to do with your brain. And so your brain is designed that it's going to keep you alive and survive. And so your brain wants to be with whatever is the known. And your known is whatever you do on a consistent basis. That's what your brain translates into safety. So like if your safety is you don't eat breakfast every day and you just grab something when you're like hangry, even though like that's not what you consciously want, like your brain has associated that that's how you live. So it's created a habit out of it. So when you do something new, it can be feel very unsafe to your brain, and your brain's going to want to revert you back to safety, which is whatever is the known. So how I like to explain it is you have like your conscious mind, your subconscious mind. Some people say conscious, unconscious, but basically 5% of your brain, and some people say less, is doing like all your critical thinking. So when you're thinking throughout the day, and that controls about 5% of what you do. Your subconscious mind is operating about 95% of what you do, and that's on autopilot. So these are your habits. These are your default emotions. This is your thinking, your beliefs, your how you view yourself, your world, your values. And so, because your brain's trying to be efficient, like it's really helping to see like how beautiful your brain is and how it's just trying to help you. So your brain's automated all these other things that it just does on a day-to-day basis, like breathing, like digesting your food, those things that you don't think about. So it's being efficient for you. But then when you decide, hey, I don't want to be in the habit of always feeling stressed and overwhelmed. I want to actually feel relaxed and peaceful. Like if that's been automated in your brain through the subconscious, that's what you're naturally going to go to. And so consciously, you can say, no, I want to do this. And some people do find luck, or not luck, but they can change it through a lot of repetition and a lot of grit and determination, change those habits and whatnot. But where hypnosis is just really powerful, and what I found in my life is you're able to bypass that conscious mind, because I had like a really strong critical faculty. So like if I wanted to change anything, my brain would be like, oh, nope, that's not you. Like whether it was confidence, self-esteem, self-love, my brain right off the bat, like if I consciously said it, my brain was like, no, that's a lie. So with hypnosis, what you're doing is you're getting into that very relaxed state. And so you're basically telling your conscious mind to take a nap, to shut off the critical faculty so that then you can change the neural pathways with repetition in your brain for how you want to think, how you want to feel. So that's where, with a hypnotist, I would work with my clients. So if they want to feel calm and peaceful, that's where we'd work with that when they're in that relaxed state of those new feelings, those new thoughts. So I am peaceful, I am calm. When things happen outside my control, I know how to ground myself and center myself and respond in a peaceful, calming, loving way. And so hypnosis is just tapping into the powerhouse of your brain and really working with the parts, your conscious, your subconscious, to get you the results you want without all that resistance and feeling like you're fighting yourself. Because I know I used to feel that way a lot. It's like I'm constantly fighting myself and I'm not getting the results I want. So let me know if that makes sense, if you want me to clarify anything.
Yeah, no, that makes really sense. It's something that I've definitely been interested in trying. My husband and I have talked about it a lot because he's a certified life coach and he's been talking about wanting to get certified as a hypnotist too. And he, I don't remember who he was talking about. There was like this course that he wanted to do. But he was telling me about it and I was super, super interested in it. But it's definitely something I would be open to trying and wanting to try. Cause I know for myself, like you said, it's just like that inner critic that like comes out, like there's things that are stopping you, that are in your way. And it's yourself, right? So you're like, okay, stop getting in your own way. Because we so overcomplicate stuff like that, that subconscious, that inner critic, that whatever it is, like we make things so much more complicated. Not that life isn't hard. Like everybody has their own stuff that they're dealing with, our own traumas, our own whatever, like relationships, issues, beliefs that we've believed about ourselves, like work complications, money, like whatever it is, we all have stuff that we're dealing with. But we also way overcomplicate things and make it so much harder by like just not having real conversations with people, like holding things in, building up resentment, like whatever it is, like I know for me, for the longest time, I'm getting so much better at it, more like this year, but like anytime I had to have a conversation with somebody, I viewed it as conflict, even though it wasn't. Like in my mind, like I didn't even notice this until my husband and I were dating and he saw what my phone bill was. And he was like, this is what you pay for your phone bill. This is outrageous. You need to call them and lower it. And I instantly got diarrhea. I was like, there's no way. I'm like sweating profusely. I'm like, what do you mean call them and lower it? Like, I'm going to get in a fight with this person on the phone. Like I built up this whole crazy scenario in my mind. And he's like, no, all you do is call them and you ask. So I'm like, you do it for me. So he gets on the phone and the lady's like, is this Elizabeth? He's like, yeah, this is Elizabeth. Like, can you lower my phone? He's like, I just see that I'm paying like this much. That's way too much. What can you do for me? She took off $50 a month, just right there on the phone. And there was no argument. There was no conflict. You know what I mean? Like he was just really nice. He was like, hey, like, what can you do for me? I'm paying way too much. Like, I'm going to go find somebody else that is cheaper because this is ridiculous. And I'm like literally sweating out of my t-shirt sitting next to him, like listening to this conversation. And he's like, Liz, you need to grow a pair. Like you have to have like hard conversations. But it's not even a hard conversation. It's this thing that's like built up. We live off of like imaginary circumstances that haven't even happened. And it honestly, that was 2017. So like maybe even 16. I don't know, but like that, like it's taken me that long. And even now, like there's certain conversations that I build up in my mind, but I've learned to like take a deep breath because I'm like, every single time I've built up a conversation in my mind and I'm like, I'm going to come to this person, just be honest and like come in love and have this conversation. And they're going to be like, screw you, blah, blah, like it's going to end awful. That's never once happened. Well, like every single time the conversation has been productive. There was, like, and I'm learning that like I'm living off of these like stressors of this, like that subconscious conflict thing of building these things up in my mind. And I spent so much stress, energy, whatever, toward this
Exactly.
made up situation versus being like, oh, okay, like I need to have like a hard conversation with somebody. I'm going to show up with love and speak my truth, and hopefully it goes well,
Yes.
and if it doesn't, I can be like, well, you know what? I love you. This is a boundary that I have to hold. Like
Mhm.
whatever it is, like you just have to learn that whatever they're coming at you with it's not personal, it's their own stuff. So like, like it all goes into that, but it's like it's still hard for me, but I'm getting so much better at it. But like, we just like, yeah, we come up with these excuses and build these situations up. And like, that's what I do with goals too. I'm like, I want to accomplish this thing. And I'm like, I don't have the time. I don't have the energy. I don't have the resources. I'm not smart enough. Like
Mhm.
I need to do so much more research and read so much more before I can put this out there, even though I've done all of that.
Mhm.
Like we really do stand in our own way. And so I love what you're talking about. Like I said, it's something that I would be super, super open to doing. So I'll have to talk with you about it.
Yeah, I was
But
gonna say we
like,
could definitely do that.
yeah, because I think that
Like,
it would be awesome.
yeah, so I love what you're saying with the stories, because that was something too. Like I told myself all these stories, and to me, I thought they were truth, they were real. And like now I'm beginning to learn and see that no, those stories are my view of reality. And like just what you just explained was beautiful. How your husband saw that situation with the cell phone is no biggie, but yet for
Right.
you, it's causing you to sweat and like go into panic mode.
Oh
And
my
like that's
gosh.
huge. It's like the same situation can have a completely different interpretation meaning for one person versus another. And yes, it's all about that beautiful brain and how you view things. And so much like with hypnosis, I found goes back to like childhood, because like between the age of 0 7 is when your brain is like a sponge, and basically you're like in a walking hypnosis state, so everything's going in, and that's how you view reality, that's how you see yourself, that's how you view relationships, and all of that. And so once that becomes like your ingrained belief, then when you're later as an adult, you might be coming up with those different habits where you feel like everything's confrontational. And that's what
Mhm.
I love with like my work I do, is I help clients get to the core, get to the root of what is causing that. What happened? Was there something that happened? And you don't always have to go back and dig into your childhood or your past, but at least understanding like your awareness is huge, because that's the first step, is just being aware of that pattern. And then, yes, you can change it with repetition. Like you said, you've had all these conversations and nothing bad happened. But yet our brain loves to always search for the negative and how things are going to not work out.
Mhm.
Back to that survival mode. Keep us safe, not focus on like the beautiful bush of berries, but is there a tiger hiding behind that bush that I need to run for my life for? So it's just that very primitive part of our brains trying to help us again with survival. So yes,
Right.
just becoming aware of those stories is huge. And then with hypnosis, it's really changing those neural pathways and doing it in the least resistance way. Because like a
Yeah.
lot of people, when I did the hypnosis certification, a lot of the people were coaches and people. And they're like, I was getting so frustrated because here I am a coach and my clients aren't getting long lasting results. They might get short term results. And so that's where like hypnosis comes in, because it's really changing those neural pathways. Because, like, basically at the end of the day, if you see yourself as, not competent enough or not confident, whatever it is, that's what's going to rule how you live your life.
Mhm.
So even though you might be doing all the things, like you mentioned, learning all this new material, you know, and doing all of that, but still not maybe feeling that confidence, if you have that identity within yourself of like, you always have to learn more, know more, push yourself, like at the end of the day, that's usually what's going to trump the actual fact of like, hey, you took all these courses or you read all these books, you did all these things to
Mhm.
empower yourself and to learn these new skills. So it's really huge, I find, with hypnosis, is really retraining your brain in those neural pathways. And also something I want to point out that's been critical in like my change in evolution is realizing that the root of almost everything is self-love, self-worth.
Mhm.
So like if you don't fully love yourself and believe that you are capable, whatever your dreams are, whatever kind of relationships you want, like if you don't believe in your core that you are enough, then everything just kind of crumbles, unfortunately. So like for me, I had to do a lot of self-love work. and just accepting myself, because I used to
Mm-hmm.
have a horrible inner critic. Something goes wrong, I took it out of myself. Like, what did I mess up? What did I not do wrong? Or with like the kids, all this guilt and shame, like I'm screwing them up. I got triggered again. I raised my voice. I snapped instead of being understanding. Then my toddler threw his juice everywhere, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and I had this really horrible inner critic. And it was just always constantly beating myself up. But then at the same point, like I looked at it and I was like, this isn't helping me. Because like I'm in such a horrible spot and negative spiral that then I wasn't coming from a place of love and joy. So
Mm-hmm.
that's really key to it. It's like your inner critic. And so with like hypnosis, that's one of the things I work a lot with my clients is just that basic self-love, self-acceptance, so that your voice inside your head, you want it to be your cheerleader, not like a drill sergeant being like, go harder, try harder, you screwed up again, go again. You
Mm-hmm.
know, the most change I've had is when I'm actually there with love and compassion for myself. Be like, you know what? It was a hard situation. You didn't get much sleep. You're doing the best you can. Like right now in this moment, what can you do to support yourself? And that's
Mm-hmm.
where then all of a sudden things shift and change, and I can be more loving with myself, with my kids, and others. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting how we all like approach those situations so differently, but like at the core is self-worth and value. Um,
mhm.
yeah, it's super interesting because when you were saying like I would beat myself up if something went wrong, and I was just thinking, I'm like, my default is usually to blame others instead of like taking
Mhm.
responsibility and being like, you know, I mean, depending on the situation, but I
Yeah.
can't tell you how many times that like at home, like I've cleaned or done something, and then some, I don't know, like just something's like a mess somewhere, and I'm like, Vito made a mess again, blah 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 blah, and then I realize it was me. I'm the one
Mm.
who did it, and I'm just like looking to like be pissed off at somebody or to like blame somebody, and I'm like, oh wait, no, I did that. Like that was me. You know,
Yeah.
like just like, oh, like he loaded the dishwasher weird, and I'm like, oh wait, I loaded it this morning. That was me. You know, or like,
Yeah.
and he and I have laughed about that because I've told him that, like that I'll do that sometimes, and it's just, but then somehow it still ends up like coming back to like my own self-worth, you know, and things like that too. um but yeah, it is super super interesting how that does break down. um and what you said about like the 0 to 7, like just being sponges, because then yeah, you kind of then have that thought of like, oh great, I'm gonna screw my kids up because you know. But I think just even like being aware, like you were saying, like we're all going to get triggered sometimes, but like having the awareness to know that. And also I think it's key to like not be afraid to apologize to your kids. Like I've had to apologize to Joby before and been like, I'm so sorry, you know, just that like that I yelled at her or whatever. And
Mhm.
just like I think that it's important that they see that they see
Yes.
us being willing to apologize, admit when we're wrong, and that we're doing the work too, and that we can have those
Mhm.
conversations with them, because I don't feel that that's necessarily like a generation that we grew up in.
Mm-mm. No, no. And I love that you're apologizing, because I do that too. I definitely believe in being real,
Yeah.
because I had the tendency of perfectionism before, of like everything has to be perfect. Like if I screw up, that's horrible. Whereas now it's like, no, it's a growing opportunity. It's a learning opportunity. And do I really want to model for my kids that if you mess up, that if you're not perfect, like shame on you? So like
Right.
being a mom has actually been eye-opening for me, because now it's allowing me to treat myself in the way I want to treat my kids. Because I'm like, you know, from all the parenting books I've read and everything, it's not so much about what you say, what comes out of your mouth. They're watching you and how you behave and treat. And I've
Yeah.
definitely seen it. My daughter now will like say when the younger one's upset, like, oh, I see you're feeling really, you know, upset that the toy is not working. You know, here, let me give you a hug, or these different things to like empathize and to support each other. And yeah, I
Right.
definitely do that with my kids all the time, because I'm not perfect. I get
Mm-hmm.
triggered, I yell, or I all of a sudden put stuff away when it's like, oh, there was something else that happened and I didn't have the full picture. But in that moment, I was stressed. So I just went to what I thought happened. So yeah, being able to be open with my kids, and I'm like, I'm learning here right with you, and I'm going to say I'm sorry and see how I can fix it and repair it, because I think that is just as important as, always responding calmly, because that's not real. That's
Right.
fake.
Yeah, I
Because
don't
that's
know
like something
anybody who's like always responded
no,
calmly.
and that's like something too. Like I used to get in that comparison trap, because you see all these people on Instagram, Facebook, like the perfect mom, the perfect
Yeah,
home.
not even
They're
close.
always doing these amazing, like Pinterest famous Martha Stewart crafts. And so like I felt that need to live up to that. When in reality, I'm like, oh no, I'm setting myself up for failure, and my kids, because I don't want them to think that that's how they have to live up to. So
Right.
which has
Yeah.
been really
Yeah. My friend the other day on Instagram sent me like a reel about like a sensory type bin thing you could do for your kids, like a fun Easter one. And I just like wrote back, I go, yeah, that's way too much work for me right now. Like I don't even have a lot
I
going
know.
on. I just overwhelmed thinking about it. Like,
Mhm.
no, thank you
Yeah.
though. Like, yeah, that looks cool. Good for your kids. I can't do it. Like,
Yeah. And
it's
that's huge right there, that you realize that. It's like, I think so many of us put that pressure on it, like, oh, they're doing that, we got to do that. When it's like, does it bring you joy?
Mhm.
And if like your gut reaction is no, then don't do it. What would bring you
Right.
joy?
Right. Yeah.
Instead of focusing on the shoulds or what you should be doing, or they're doing that, so I need to
Right.
do
Right.
it.
Yeah. And it's so easy to fall into that should in parenting. And that's something that I have to keep myself in check on. And I'm sure like every person listening, just because we do compare ourselves to social media, which isn't real. People, it's the highlight reel, and nobody's perfect. And it's yeah, I mean I like it because you can get some really cool ideas on there. It'd be like, oh
Yeah.
wow, this would be really fun to do with my kids this summer. But also you could feel like, oh, I'm not doing all these magical things for my kids for spring right now. Like,
Yeah.
but like you said, if it doesn't bring you joy, like, yeah, like do obviously like take care of your kids, but like, you don't have to like set up some crazy thing for them. Like, just they're fine playing with sticks outside,
Uh-huh. Yeah. My
They
kids
don't
love
need
when
a
boxes
lot.
come in the mail. They
They
like
like
just
what?
playing with the shoe boxes, cut them up and
Oh,
make
yeah.
forts out of them.
I remember
Yeah.
as a kid making mud pies, and I don't remember the last time I saw a kid making mud pies. I used to love
Uh,
that. We'd like set them out and like have them dry. We'd pretend that we were like actually making pies and stuff. Um,
fun.
but yeah, yeah. So I mean, they really don't need a lot. You don't have to do all of that stuff
No.
to be a good parent. So before we wrap up, where can the listeners find you, follow you, and learn more about hypnosis and what you're doing?
So I'm on Facebook and Instagram also. So the main one is on Instagram. It's at Mama Following Her Joy. And I can give you like the exact
Mhm. And then, okay, so you said, sorry, you're mostly on Instagram?
Yes, I do have Facebook too that I'm on also. It's Elizabeth.Cobb, number 96. So
Okay,
they can
yeah.
connect with me either way.
Yeah, I'll leave all
And
the
then
links in the
also,
show notes so that like however people want to connect with you, they can.
yeah, that would be great. And then also, Liz, I was thinking about, I would really like to connect with your listeners more and help support them. So right now, I just felt like the nudge to offer 10 free coaching sessions to your mamas.
Oh,
So I
wow.
will give you a link for that, and just to help them work with whatever they need. So like if it's self-care they're having a struggle with, or the monkey mind, the inner critic. So I want to give 10 of your mamas just to get to know your audience better, and also to support mamas. Because I know for me, that was huge. Like doing this work by myself, no. Like I needed the support. And that's why like I enrolled in all these programs and learned from coaches, is because I realized how valuable it was to have somebody who was not in my head, because in my own head, it can be a nasty, ugly place. So to have that support system and to learn tools that I had no idea of. So yeah, I would like to give that
Yeah,
to your
that's
listeners.
amazing. Thank you so much. That's very generous. Um, that's really exciting. I'm excited for the 10 free listeners that hop on this. So yeah, give me the link to that, and we'll figure all of that out. And then one last question before we wrap up. Do you drink coffee in the morning? And if you do, how do you take your morning Java?
Oh yes, I drink coffee and it's black.
Man, I interview a lot of people who just drink black coffee. I used to be that cool. I'm not anymore, but
Uh-huh.
anybody who drinks black coffee, I'm like, you're doing it right.
How do you drink yours?
Well, right now I'm on decaf. So sometimes I have
Okay.
decaf, sometimes I just have tea. Like I've just been drinking herbal tea. Whoops, that I just
Ah,
spilled all over myself
look
today.
out for-
But I usually just do decaf with like a scoop of collagen and then maybe like a little bit of sweetener. So that's
Um,
usually what I do. So, but yeah, I used to drink it black. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not that cool anymore.
oh no, we should change. Nothing wrong with that.
Awesome. Well, it was so great connecting with you, Liz, and we'll leave all the links in the show notes. And I look forward to this episode coming out so everyone can hear it.
Yeah. Thank you again so much, Liz.